Improving at chess as an adult can be difficult. And if you're anything like me and you've been stuck at the same level for a while, it can be even more frustrating if you're trying to do all the right things to get better. You can end up doing all the wrong things, like playing hundreds of blitz and bullet games until 3 or 4 in the morning, rushing through puzzles, or overlearning openings and trying to memorize too many lines. To combat this, I'd like to propose a simple and, to be honest, fairly obvious training method that helps us know what to focus on and allocates our time accordingly so that we can build healthy habits and enjoy our chess journey, the byproduct of which we may actually improve. Let me introduce you to SPAR. What is SPAR? Well, each letter stands for a different thing. And in a moment, I'm going to tell you exactly what they are. I won't make you wait for the rest of the video to put it all together. You can decide whether you take the information and run, or whether you watch the rest of the video where we go through each one in turn and then put it all together into a cohesive routine. SPAR stands for solve, play, analyze, repeat. Solve, play, analyze, repeat. That simple. I told you it was fairly obvious. We want to solve chess positions. We want to play chess games. We want to analyze those games, take the learning from that analysis before repeating the whole process. Let's get into each one in turn, starting with solve. It's worth remembering that every chess position is a puzzle with an answer, or at least a few good moves to choose from. The better we get at solving these puzzles in training, the better we get at solving these puzzles in practice when we actually play games. Now, I'm not just talking about tactics where it's checkmate in 2 or 3 moves or something, or a combination to win material. I'm talking about finding the best move in any position, whether that's a slow defensive move or a developing move, a prophylactic move, that is one that plays against your opponent's ideas, or something else. Most people start with tactics and solve a lot of tactics because that's how most games are decided, especially at lower levels. So it's good to have an understanding of tactical themes, at least a basic understanding of things like pins, skewers, discovered check, double check, these kind of things, to be able to solve positions effectively. And if you're a beginner or that's not something that you know much about, I'll put some resources for learning in the description. But we can choose any position, evaluate it, try and work out the best move and try and solve it in our training. It could be tactical puzzles like the ones that we get on Lichess or chess.com, or out of any one of thousands of books that you could choose. It could be a random position that you generate from an online generator, or you could play Guess the Move against a Grandmaster game and try and find the moves that they played in their games. Whatever it is, as long as you're engaging with the process of solving chess positions, then you are training. And as we shall see, once we start to play and analyze our games, we can use our learning to then influence what we train. So say you play a game and you end up dropping a knight fork where you lose your queen, and then you do it again. Well, maybe you've got a blind spot for knight forks, so you need to go and train those in the solving aspect of this training method. To solve a position, there is a kind of workflow to it, a thought process. Now, obviously, as I keep saying on this channel, I'm not a master or a grandmaster, so I'm not the best at doing this, but I do have a kind of thought process that I go through. And it's a fairly standard one that you learn when people teach you how to solve chess positions. You start with forcing moves, you start with checks, captures and threats, and only once you've exhausted those possibilities do you then move on to other types of move, developing move, defensive move, slower moves, etc. Depending on the type of position you're solving, you may want to do an evaluation of that position first. Maybe it's not obvious once you've exhausted those forcing moves what the right move should be, and then you want to go deeper into the position and look at who you think might be better or worse and why, and looking at positional elements like open files or weak squares, pawn structures, and things like that. I've got some curated examples here to go through a thought process. They are mostly tactical in nature, but we'll do a few that I already know the answer to show you this process, and then I'll try and solve a couple live as well to try and demonstrate this in action. Okay, so in this puzzle here, we're starting with something simple. It's checkmate in one. And with this and with any of the other puzzles that I show, feel free to obviously pause the video and work it out for yourself. But we need to go through our forcing moves first. So checks, captures, and threats. Now I know this is a mate in one puzzle, so I know I'm just looking for a checkmate rather than, a capture or some other kind of threat. That does make it a little bit easier. But even if we didn't, we'd still want to start with those moves. So first of all, what checks are there available in the position? Well, there's this check, 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 this one, and this one. And this one as well. And I think we can quickly eliminate ones that don't work. This one just, drops the queen, as does this one, as does this one. This one maybe might work, but we can see that once the rook moves to g8, the king can then move over to the h file. So it's not a mate in one. This one drops the rook. So that leaves the other check that we want to look at, which is queen g8 check. And actually, if we visualize the queen on that square, we can see that the rook cuts the king off here. The queen cuts the king off here and here. And the queen cuts the king off here and here. And then this pawn cuts the king off from here. So that is the mate in one that we're looking for. And we just got there very simply by looking at checks. So now we've got this puzzle here, which is slightly more complicated, but the thought process remains the same. We start with our forcing moves, checks, captures, and threats. What checks do we have in this position? Well, there are two. You can go queen to a8 check. That one seems fairly obvious. There's also rook takes c6 with check here. So we have to evaluate each one in turn and see which one works, if either of them do. So rook takes here, well, the pawn can just recapture, and yeah, you've just given up your rook for a pawn. And even if you follow up with queen a8 check here, well, the knight can block, and then the king's got a way out kind of this way. So I don't think that works. I think you're just giving up a rook for not enough gain, shall we say. Rook takes, pawn takes, queen check, knight blocks. The bishop and the queen both attack the knights. You can give check there, but once the king moves out of the way, well, now the queen is under attack. So I don't think that one's right. So we're just going through a bit of calculation, a bit of visualization as well. This is the kind of thing that doing puzzles helps you to train. And it's just about trying to picture each position in your mind without actually moving the pieces to work out what's happening in that position and solve the puzzle in that position, and then moving it on and moving it on. And the more you practice this, the deeper you can get with that skill. So we don't think that this one works, so let's look at the other one. So queen a8 check. Well, the queen cuts the king off along the back rank, so he can't go here. He can't go there. And this pawn cuts the king off from going to c7. So it's a bit more forcing, this one. You can only play knight b8 to block the check to the king. So after queen a8 check and knight b8, now what do we do? Again, let's do our forcing moves, checks, captures, and threats. So in that position, there's again this check. And again, after pawn takes, well, you've kind of got the same thing, just the other way around that we've already looked at. So we can discard that one. So again, queen a8, check, knight b8 to block. Well, there's also this check here. Now the knight's moved, you could play check on d8. However, the rook can just capture it. And, the king always has the vacated d7 square to escape to if the queen ever takes on b8. So, oh, but hang on a minute. Maybe that means there is a way of playing this check, which means the king can't get away or the rook can't be captured. So queen a8 check, the knight blocks. Well, if we think about what checks we have in the position, we could play queen takes b8 check. And this one works because the king has to capture the queen. And remember the knight has moved. The knight went to b8 to block the check in the first place, but then the queen gave itself up for the knight. The king goes to the b8 square, and now rook to d8 check comes with a discovered check from the bishop. It's double check with the rook, so there's no way the king can get out of it, and that is checkmate. So queen a8 check, the knight moves, we capture with check, and then double check on d8 is checkmate. So just by a process of elimination and doing this, repeating this over and over with different puzzles to get more comfortable with the process, more comfortable with the skill of calculation and visualization, looking at forcing moves, checks, captures, and threats. We've only done checks really so far. You can solve mate puzzles of this nature. I've got this position here as another example of checks, captures, and threats. You should always start with those forcing moves, but let's say that hasn't shown us the answer. How do we evaluate the position to assess what's going on and find a solution? Well, there's lots of different elements to a position that you could look at. I would start with what seems most obvious to you. For me in this position, it's the pawns. It's clear to see that black has got more pawns than white. They've got these 7 versus white's 5. And this pawn here on b2 is isolated, that is on its own, and it's undefended and under attack. So if you were to remove all the other pieces from the board and just leave the king and pawns, that endgame would be winning for black. So white doesn't want to allow black to consolidate the position, so their material advantage becomes a telling factor. That tells me that white needs to try and find active moves to try and build on any initiative they may have or to press an attack. So let's look at some other elements to see if they're well placed to do that. Let's start with the center, by which I mean these 4 squares here. Well, white has occupation of e4, control of d5. This pawn is supported by a knight and a rook, so it's very secure. The knight also looks at d5. So in the center, white is definitely doing very well and is much better than black. This pawn actually cramps black's position quite a lot. And, you know, they are controlling some squares with these 2 pawns here. But white has a lot more space and therefore a lot more mobility in the center and around the center to be able to be active. The other element that really speaks to activity is development of the pieces. And here we can clearly see the trumps that white has in the position. These rooks are very, very active compared to their counterparts. And that's actually a downside of having the extra pawns. Because white has less pawns, they've got more semi-open files to work with, so the rooks enjoy a lot more freedom. They could also even step up, you know, to the 3rd rank and have freedom across the board like this, whereas their counterparts are kind of stuck behind their own pawns and only active on the back rank. These knights look fairly similar in terms of activity. You know, they're both, eyeing up central squares like this. But it's these bishops that are really telling. White's bishop is much, much better than black's. This piece is stuck behind its pawn. It's only got 1 square like this. And, you know, black would love to be able to swap the minor pieces off and go into the endgame, as we've said. So we don't want to allow them to do that. And actually, this piece is also undefended. Not only is it inactive, it could also become a target. The other elements that I would maybe consider would be things like king safety. I don't think that's necessarily relevant here because kings are both pretty safe. Yes, white has played h3, so that does undefend some dark squares around the king. But as I say, I don't think that's particularly relevant. You could also look at things like diagonals or weak squares. That is squares that can't be defended by pawns from either side. And there's lots of other positional elements that you could go into. But these are the ones that I think are most relevant for this specific position. And yes, we need to play actively as white. I would say that white is better here because they have that better activity and they have the initiative. So now we need to go back and look at our checks, captures and threats to try and work out what the best move is. Well, there are no checks in the position for white. In terms of captures, you could take this pawn on d6, but that just drops your queen. You could also capture this knight, but then after the bishop recaptures, it becomes a good piece on this diagonal and you're helping black solve their problems and get closer to that endgame that they want. So let's move on from captures. Now we need to look at threats. There are only 2 threats that I can really see here. One is to use the position of the queen in front of black's king to try and threaten mate on g7. You could play bishop to h6 to do that. But black has got a couple of ways to defend it. They could just play g6 and offer this exchange, which I wouldn't want to take as white. You know, this piece is very good, whereas this is very passive, as we've said. So I don't think that would be good. You know, we could play bishop h6, but then they could also play knight to h5 to attack this queen. It can step up to attack the knight, but again, they could play g6 and offer that exchange that we don't want to take. So I don't see a follow-up there, and I don't think bishop h6 is the right idea. Let's go back to the fact that this piece is undefended. Can we attack it? Yes, we can. We can play knight to d5, a very active move, because taking the piece would also come with check, and the downside of black's last move, which was queen b3, is that it's in the gaze of this piece through the knight. So by moving the knight, you also threaten the queen. So after knight d5, well, they can't take the knight because they drop the queen. They can't defend the bishop because the knight blocks the queen's access to the e6 square. And if you just move the queen somewhere, well, you can't go there because there's a knight there, but, you know, somewhere like this, then, you know, you drop this piece with check anyway. So after knight d5, what if they take the queen? Well, now you have the intermezzo. Knight takes e7 with check, and when the king moves, you pick up the queen. So that is the answer. It is an active move. We play knight to d5. Let's do one more actually, and this time we'll do a random puzzle from Lichess and try and follow our thought process. Okay, so we've got this puzzle here where it's black to move. Let's start with checks, captures, and threats. So first of all, checks. Well, as far as I can see, there is only one check available in the position, and that is to play queen check on d1. And you can't block it. There's nothing to block that check. You know, the knight or the queen can't come back to block it. So after queen check on d1, the king has to move. And then you've got another check, which is to play the pawn up with check, like this. This pawn cuts the king off from here. So the king would have to capture. Then the queen can come across with check. And, you know, the king could then move either here or here. Okay. If the king moves here, then you've got bishop back with check. And then if the king moves here, well, you can also then play this check, which actually looks like it would be checkmate. But he can go here. Then you've got this check, which I believe is mate. So let's just start from the beginning. Check, king here. Check, king here. Check, king here. Check. Obviously, you could block with the queen, but then you drop your queen. So king here. Actually, you could also go there. Okay, king here first. You go check, king here, check, and I believe that is checkmate. If he goes here first, well, then you give check this way first, and then he has to go back here, and then you go here, and he has to give up the queen. And actually, it doesn't quite result in mate, because that does free up the f4 square. But then, I mean, you've got a queen here, so you can give check from above. And I've just done that by looking at checks. There's one check in the position. I've tried to just check the king every single time. And I think that is the right answer. Check. And it doesn't even go any further than that. It doesn't result in a mate according to the engine. But let me just follow along the main line as it shows me here. I mean, I've solved the puzzle. That was the end of the puzzle. But here it gives king to h4, bishop e7 check. Then it gives king g4, f5 check. And the reason why it's not mate is because it gives the queen up here. It doesn't give you the chance to play the pawn up this way. So now it goes like this, and then like this, and then the king is able to capture, and it's -9. Okay, it's -9 in this position. So, you know, you've got an extra queen. We don't really need to go any further than that, but you would take here with check and just, you know, continue to play the game. So that's the line the engine gives. And actually, I didn't quite consider the queen taking the pawn before the king moves up and allowing you to checkmate it. So let's just go back to the beginning and let's just calculate that sequence through in our heads as well. So I'm just going to do it. I'm going to try not to use arrows this time. Queen D1 check, King G2, H3 check, King takes H3, Queen F1 check, King H4, Bishop E7 check, King G4, F5 check, Queen takes F5, E takes F5, King takes F5, and Queen takes F2. Okay. Whenever you solve a position or a puzzle, if you check the answer and you got it wrong in any way, like there's a line that you missed, or even if you got it completely incorrect, read through the answer, then go back and look at the start position again and visualize the correct answer in your head, because that will really help you with pattern recognition and to be able to visualize better and deeper the more you practice doing it. Obviously, there's loads more that we could get into when it comes to solving chess positions and evaluating those positions, different types of moves we could look for, different methods that I mentioned, like random position generators or guess the move against grandmaster games, etc. Pick your method, pick your resource, just do the work, and you will notice an improvement in your ability to solve positions if you just continuously work at it and do it consistently over time. I would probably solve about 5 or 6 puzzles a day. That's definitely a good limit for myself. Some people do kind of 15, 20 puzzles. It's up to you depending on how much time you have and how much energy you have. But definitely spending longer on fewer puzzles, I think, will stand you in better stead in the long run. And it will help you know what to look for when you play an actual game. And that is what we're going to do now. We're going to play a live game and try and talk through the thought process. Okay, let's go and get a 10-minute rapid game on Lichess and see how I get on. We've got an opponent and we've got the black pieces. A similarly rated opponent, so it should be a good game. He's played E4. Let's play C5. Knight to F3, Knight C6. So obviously I'm in my opening prep here. Still, it's, you know, move 2, move 3. If you don't have an opening repertoire, it's a good idea to understand opening principles at least before you start playing games. But you can start playing chess without knowing anything about openings, you know, and just have fun with it. It doesn't really matter. But depending on your level, you may want to develop an opening repertoire. And one of my previous videos goes into how to create an opening repertoire using Lichess Study. So I'll link that in the description below and you can go and check that out. But here we've already got something slightly different because I'm not used to this bishop c4 and then knight takes on c6. This is something new that I've never seen before. And I'm wondering if, you know, there's some issues kind of here, whether I'm falling into something. Obviously, if I take back with this guy, then I'm going to drop the queen with bishop takes here. So there is that. So I want to capture back with the b pawn. I know that anyway. I usually want to capture back with the b pawn when they take on c6 because it opens this file. So I have to recapture, and this is the only recapture that I think works. So let's go for that. The bishop is doing good work on this long diagonal, so he can't develop this bishop and he can't push this pawn. But they're just going for a really quick attack against me here. Okay, this is a fast attack. Trying to make me out the box. So fair play to you. I think, you know, the move E6 is probably good here. Let's just have a look at knight to F6. Well, if he plays knight F6, he can play this move, and yeah, I'm getting destroyed there, right? I am getting destroyed, or am I? Because don't I have queen a5? Got queen a5 check. So I think that I could play knight f6, e5, queen a5 check. And then if bishop here, you can take here with check. So I think that's fine. After knight f6, if he castles, if I then just castle and he plays this, well, now the rook defends the pawn. So I think that's okay. Knight here, push, check, or I play e6. I think I prefer to get my king out the middle, so I'm going to play knight f6. And if he does play this, I think it's just a mistake. I mean, I think it's just a mistake because of this move. And that's actually something that I know from other openings that I play. You know, the accelerated dragon is a theme in that, which is, you know, the Sicilian that I like to play. And in other openings like the Benoni, etc. So I think I'm just winning a pawn here. And I need to be a little bit careful what I'm doing. Do I even have this now? Or is that one step too far? Is that one step too far? So, because if I play this, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, knight takes. The reason why I'm thinking this is because maybe I get that. But then, you know, if he castles and puts a rook on this file. Yeah. I'm up a pawn. I'm going to castle. I'm going to play it kind of safe. I don't need to rush. I've got the pawn. Okay, that's an interesting move. Can I still play this now? I think I can because I'm actually looking at playing this move. So d5, let's say it goes backwards. Now I play bishop here and I pick up an exchange, right? He's also looking at maybe playing this move though. But maybe I can shuffle back over to a5 and then, you know, maybe do something with this. Yeah, let's play d5. I do need to watch my time. When I explain games, sometimes I do get a bit low on time. So, all right, so he's gone here. So now I think I can just play this, right? And actually, where's the queen going to go? Got to go there, and I can at least exchange the queen and then win an exchange that way. So yeah, I'm going to play that. Bishop comes to g4 against the queen. And I think I'm going to get an exchange of queens and an exchange and a pawn out of this, which I think will do me very well. So he's gone here. So I'm going to take that. Then I'm going to take that. And now I think I want to play knight here, kick this guy, and then get this pawn rolling up the board and maybe also open this line. So let's play that one. He doesn't have, you know, his bishop's here, not here. Sometimes I fall foul for this. This is definitely a trick that I miss a lot. So now let's just take the center. Could even think about putting a knight on f4, getting rid of this dark squared bishop. So here, bishop takes, pawn takes. That gets rid of his bishop pair, and then I've got, you know, maybe stuff I can do there. So yeah, let's do that. I'm happy to do that. Yes, I'm getting double pawns on the F file and maybe not taking, you know, the center that I wanted, but I am taking away squares for his knight as well. So he's starting to really come at me over on this side of the board. And actually the knight defends here as well. So there is that one. Do I want to play h6? So if I go here, I could just lock it up. Or here, I could lock it up. Yeah, I do. Let's play h6. Right, I've got 5 minutes left. He's still got 8 minutes. So I would like to do well in this game and, you know, get a good win. Let me just get out of this idea to try and win this guy. I'm now also, you know, looking at that maybe. And you know, I think I'm doing okay. And maybe I actually want to play f6 and then push this one. Or maybe I just want to take the other open file. Yeah, let's take the other open file. Right, 4 minutes. So I want to just play well and do a good game here. So let me just see if I can convert this position given my time. So I might not talk so much. I might just try and convert the position if I can. Okay, that one's interesting because maybe I now get kind of this guy. And then if he takes it, I've got a passed pawn. I can support it with this guy. If he moves his king, well, I might go there anyway. All right, let's give check. He's gone there. Do I want to attack this one? No, I don't think I want to come there. I think I want to get this one centralized as well because I might want to push here and here. And I think I'm doing very well. Yeah, so now I can do this because this is defended. And I'm just going to push my pawns in the center. Tense. It's often, you know, hardest game to win is a one game. So, right, let's do this. Consolidate the pawn structure there. My king can step up. This can go here. Don't think this is looking very good for my opponent. Maybe he's trying to come in here. But if I push this one, and he takes, and then I take, then I'm looking to push like all the way up, right? Obviously, he would defend this square, so I wouldn't just be able to push it straight away. But maybe I'm also opening stuff against his king. You know, maybe I've got a trick with this and then this. Sorry, here, here, and here. Right, so he's gone for that one. That's interesting. So I can get rid of more material here if I want to. I could take this pawn, then if he takes, I go check. And then, you know, maybe I like that bishop. I don't know. Let's do that. Let's take this guy. Because maybe then my rook is also coming in over here. I like this bishop. I do like this bishop. But you know, I'm up a rook, right? So if I can get rid of this one, I've got an exchange, not up a rook. So there's that. If I go check here and he comes in here. Interesting. I've also got check here. So checks, captures, and threats. Check, king moves, check. Yeah, I don't like that one so much. Maybe I can just double my rooks. I don't see any checks, captures, or threats that work. So yeah, let's double my rooks. Maybe he plays this, but the bishop defends the rook very nicely. He's gone in like that. If I go here, he goes there maybe. Oh, hang on a minute. This check. Oh, there's a knight there. Let's double my rooks on the open file. I think that's probably a good idea. Right, I've got 3 minutes. I've got 3 minutes. So we do need to do something slightly better here. Oh, well, this looks quite nice. So let's do that. And then here. Now I'm attacking this pawn. And, you know, can I do something else here? Maybe I just want to consolidate this guy. He's gone there. I've got check. Oh, no, that's actually a very nice move, isn't it? Let's go here. Right, I've only got 3 minutes, so I do want to try and win this game. That is something that I would really like to do. So, you know, hopefully I can do that. Try and put this in the back of the net. Obviously, I'm much lower on time, so he's going to play against that. Right, so he's gone here. I see what he's trying to do with that one. If I go check, yeah, no, I see that one. So if I go there, if I go here, he attacks. No, well, he can't, can he? I'm actually gonna take that. He'd take that and attack this. But I can just give check, right? Oh, I didn't see that one. That one's very nice. Let's give a check. right? And then do I want to take this one and win that one? So yeah, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to convert this into a rook and pawn endgame. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but you know, whatever. That's what we're trying to do. Maybe he tries to come over here, but then I go here and the king can't come in, so he can't attack this. I've got this pass pawn. I can maybe come back and try and win this one as well. And that's what I'm going to try and do. Let's at least push this pawn all the way up. Right, 2 minutes. I've got 2 minutes. So this is hair-raising stuff. I don't know if I've given up my advantage by giving back the exchange there, but I think this should be winning. I mean, I do have extra stuff, right? I do have extra stuff, so... And he's, you know, I can't check and do anything like this, but I can win some more pawns. So yeah, maybe this has gone slightly wrong. I think my time trouble maybe did pay slightly something to do with it. I do think that having this time trouble certainly didn't help me. I can't queen the pawn. He's going to take it now. So now I take this one, and actually this isn't clear, right? I mean, I do have another passed pawn, this one. And maybe I can come around this way. All right, I just need to play quickly. So forgive me if the commentary isn't exactly on point, but you know, I've got to try and win this game in 2 minutes. He's got twice the amount of time that I do. We'll see what he's going to do now. Okay, so he's attacking my guy. I can give check. And if he goes back here, oh, he goes there. So now I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here. Do I want to do that? Do I need to get my king involved? Let's get my king involved. Maybe I can do this, actually. So it's a tough one. If I lose this one, oh, now hang on a minute. Here, 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 and I've got opposition. I've got an extra pawn. So I think this is winning. Now I've got the opposition, and he can go here. But I can take it back with this one. Okay, so now I've got opposition. I've got a passed pawn here. So what do I need to play now? So now I need to flank or outflank him, outmaneuver him. So I'm going to go here. If he goes there. Oh, now hang on a minute. Here, 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 here. Yeah, I don't think I've done this one correctly, actually. And now I go here and he goes there and I push. Yeah, okay, I did work that one out. If I tried to go around, he would have come around and got this pawn and then promoted this one first. So, you know, he could have gone there and, you know, but now I've got 2 pawns. So this should be winning. Let's go here. Let's push. Let's go up. Let's push. It's gone there. Let's go there. He's pushed. Let's go there. He goes here. Now, if I go here, he can go there. So I'm going to do that. Like this. Here. Queens. And then I'm going to go here. And then it's checkmate on the next move. And actually, he's gone offline. So he's disconnected. He's decided not to not to be checkmated. He left the game. I can claim victory in 50 seconds. So we'll leave it there. We got the win and we'll move on to the analysis. Now it's time to learn from the game and from our mistakes by analysing. My previous video was a detailed look at analysis with a method that you can check out via the link in the description. For this game, I've just done a very quick analysis and I'd like to share the main takeaway points and interesting moments. I'm not going to go through the whole game because you've already seen me play it. Instead, I've taken the main positions to learn from out of the analysis to show you. The first is from the opening where we've played an accelerated dragon and my opponent played the move bishop to c4. This kind of threw me a bit because I wasn't used to this move order. I carried on with bishop g7 and they took the knight on c6. And here I correctly recapture with the b pawn. Just to show you what happens if I take with the d pawn, well, this is a blunder because they've got the move bishop takes f7 check. And this king is deflected and the queen will pick up on d8. So I'm glad I didn't do that. I correctly recaptured b takes c6. Then they played queen f3 and they've got a very obvious idea. They're putting instant pressure on the weak point on f7. I briefly considered the move e6, but instead I went for piece development, looking for king safety, and I calculated that after e5 I could play queen a5 check and pick up this pawn, so this was okay for me. But I didn't consider all of my opponent's responses to queen a5 check. After e5 and then queen a5, I only looked at bishop to d2, and actually they've got a very nice move here. They can just play queen c3. This blocks the check and defends the pawn. So the best I've got is to exchange queens. They take back and I help them to develop a knight to c3. And then I have to move this guy because he's under attack from the pawn. So you can either put him back on g8, but that kind of undevelops the piece, or you can play knight to g4 and kind of gang up on this pawn here, except it's actually poison. If they play bishop to e2, attacking the knight, well, you have to defend it with h5. If you merrily chop away like so, this is a blunder because the bishop cuts the knight off from all of these squares, supported by these pawns, and all the other squares the knight could go to are occupied. So you lose the piece after the move f4. Would I have actually found all of that after missing queen c3? I'm not entirely sure. If we go back to where they play queen f3, well, the other move that I briefly considered was actually correct. You play e6 and you just blunt the diagonal of this bishop. And I looked at the following line. After castles, d5, they play bishop to b3. Now you play knight f6, because if they push e5 here, it's actually a mistake. You can play knight d7 and you can win the pawn this way. You can get castled. You've got a great center. Black's minus 1.3 and doing very, very well. Instead, they would take the pawn here on d5. So e takes d5. And after the recapture, they could play c4 because you do have some problems on this diagonal at the moment with the queen being on f3. But, you can simply just castle here. You can look to play bishop a6 to protect this rook. And it's, it's an equal game, but black has got everything that they want out of the opening. So I will go back and adjust my opening repertoire to add this line and make sure that I play e6 against the direct attack of bishop c4 and queen f3. The next position to look at is this one here, where we've got out of the opening, we've got out of the middle game, we've got an end game with a few pieces and things left on the board, and black is doing very, very well. It's -4 because the rest of the game's gone very well for us so far up to this point. And we've basically just recaptured a bishop here on f4 and opened up lines of attack against the white king. So we've got a very, very nice position. And white plays the move h4. And their idea is clear. They want to try and crack down on the h-file. They've got this rook here. They've got this bishop eyeing up over here as well. So, that makes a lot of sense. But here, we played the move h6. And this is inaccurate. You can see the engine evaluation drops a bit. It was -4.2. And after h6, it's -3.6. And really, what the engine tells me we should play, and actually I massively agree with it, is we should just take the open file. And it says you can play this rook over, but I actually kind of prefer playing rook f over to e8. The reason being is that this rook was kind of stuck behind this pawn until you play this move, Whereas this one, could potentially come to the B file or support something on the C and D files, or maybe even continue to support the pawn on A7. So I prefer the move rook F to E8. If we go back, you'll see that there's no real difference between the two moves up here anyway. So rook F to E8 just underlines the fact that you've got this massive open file that you can work with, and only black is really able to take control of it. In fact, if we go back a couple of moves, if white was to play rook to E1 to try and take the file, well, the best move here, according to the engine, is apparently bishop F6, but you could also just, challenge that rook on the file straight away, so that, if it was to capture here, you capture back, and you've got very active pieces and a very nice game. So the takeaway lesson from all of this, after the move H4, is to try and consider active piece play before looking at pawn moves that change, the kind of more positional elements. So H6 has got a definite idea. The idea is whichever pawn they push, I can push one of these and lock up the king's position to keep my king safe, but it's a bit too slow and we can just get on with things, play actively and take a nice open file. The next lesson is also to do with pawn play versus piece activity, but regarding a very specific pawn structure, by which I mean the arrangement of pawns in your position. Here we've got what's called hanging pawns. These two pawns are side by side, and they're not defended by any pawns on the adjacent files, so they're called hanging. And these can actually be, quite an asset because they control a lot of space and a lot of squares in the center of the board. And actually they have a very clamping effect on white's position at the moment. But they can also quickly become a weakness if you push one of them, which is exactly what happened in the game. In this position, I played the move D4, and you can instantly see, well, this just gives up control of the C4 square. This pawn is now weak because it's been left behind by its brother, so it's a backwards pawn and essentially becomes isolated. And white can play the move C4 here and just fix that weakness and have something to play against. So that wasn't something that I considered in the game. I just thought I can just get my pawns rolling, but maybe I need to learn to be a bit more patient and play with my pieces instead. For example, you could play here bishop to F2, and after rook to D1, come in with check. And if they block the check, you exchange a pair of rooks, you're up in exchange, got an extra pawn, and you're doing very well with this great central control and central space, or they could just step the king back. But if you look at this position, you've got very active pieces, great central control, as I've said. This is much, much better than what I played in the game. So definitely, considering piece play over pawn moves is a theme of this game. The next takeaway moment picks up after I played the mistake D4. My opponent responded with a mistake of their own and played bishop E4. And I actually found the right idea to begin with. I took the pawn on C3. They took back with the king. And here I played rook D4. And this is actually not the best. I'm trying to cut the king off from this rank, which is fair enough. I'm just kind of getting in the way of my own pieces. And I didn't stop to consider checks, captures, and threats. And that's the lesson. I want to try and do that a lot more in any given position in my games, especially given what we looked at in the solve part of this video. If I had, I might have considered the move bishop D4 a lot more. There's this really cool line that the engine showed me. I don't think I would have found it myself, to be honest with you. But it's a cool idea I'd like to show you. They go king C2, and now you play F5. And the bishop can't take it because the rook comes in with check, and you pick up this piece over here on B2. So the pawn captures. Now you hoover off the knight, the king recaptures, you hoover off the bishop, and you attack the pawn on E4 like this. And once they defend it with rook E1, well, now you can push your passed pawns and play the move F3. You can also start with G4. As you can see, if you go back, it actually says G4 is the best move now. It was F3 when I looked at this before. But after F3, let's say they step over to offer an exchange of this pawn for this pawn. Well, you could support it with G4. And, you can even take this pawn at some point to defend this pawn if allowed. But these two pawns are basically going to win you the game. So it's a really, really nice idea, and one I'll try and remember for future. One I might have found potentially had I considered checks, captures, and threats more thoroughly, although there's a lot of engine work in there, so maybe not. Before we look at the final main takeaway, I just wanted to mention this position here. I played the move rook takes b3, and you know what? I actually just totally missed the fact that the king could take on b3. It was a real blind spot, real blind moment on my part, but it's actually okay because if they take the rook, well, now you take this bishop on d5, and you kind of transpose into something similar to what happened in the game. After the king steps up to c4, you play check. They take this pawn, and you win the pawn over here. The main difference is that this rook is here on e1, whereas in the game, I think in a similar position, it was here on e7. So there is that, in this position, the king could come over to attack the rook straight away. You could maybe go here to attack this pawn, but it's very, very similar and may well have just transposed into the game anyway. So I just wanted to mention that as well. The final takeaway lesson from this game is to take time to calculate in the end game, even when you're low on the clock. I had 2 minutes left in this position and I didn't do that, and I got it very wrong. They took the rook on e3, which is a blunder because they need to keep the material on the board to have any kind of fighting chance. Even though they managed to win back one of the pawns, I get to take the opposition, which is I'm in front of the opponent's king when it's them to move. And I've got this extra pawn which can fly forwards to dislodge this guy, and then I can promote the g pawn. So it's a completely crushing king and pawn endgame. But after the following moves, we reached this position here. My instant reaction was to step up to e3, to come over this way, to then shepherd this pawn home. But I stopped and I thought, hang on a minute, doesn't this let them go round the corner to win the pawn on the h-file to then be able to promote themselves? And I kind of assumed that this would just work out for them. I didn't take 20 seconds to calculate it, and if I had, I may have seen that it was completely fine for black. I played king e5, which is actually also fine, as we'll see, but if I played king e3, well, they can play king g3, and then you just repeat moves, and now you can go back to this idea. But if they tried to do this, well, now you can step over. You can also go to f2. It doesn't really matter. If they keep going after the h-pawn, well, now you push, they capture, you push, then they have to step back onto the g-file to be able to promote their pawn right into the path of this pawn promoting with check. And that's why this is completely winning for black, and I could have gone for this had I taken time to work it out. If we go back to this position, instead I played king to e5, which is also completely fine. They played king to h3, and here again I just banged out my move. I played king to f5, which is a mistake. I know it's still mate in 21 according to the engine, but it is a mistake because I could have played king f4 and just stopped their king from getting back into the game on the g3 square. Anyway, after king f5, they played king g3, and here I blundered. Again, I just banged out my move. I didn't think about the consequences of the moves or what their response could be, and I just played the blunder g4. And I actually saw, after they played the counter blunder with king h2, which was completely winning, as you saw in the game, I saw that they could have played king to h4. And this is just a draw because I can either stalemate with king f4. This king no longer has any moves. It's cut off from all squares. And this pawn also can't move, so it's stalemate. Or if I give up the pawn, say with g3, well, after they capture, I step over, they step over, you win this pawn, but now the king gets back in the corner. I can never evict it from h1, so this pawn can't ever promote, and it's a draw. So I completely gave up all of my hard work because I didn't just take a few seconds to calculate before banging out my moves. So that's the main lesson I'd like to take away from this phase of the game. Hopefully you can see how analysing our games helps us to study every aspect of chess. We've looked at openings, we've looked at middle games, things like tactics and positional elements like pawn structures, for example, and we've studied end games. So we get a well-rounded development in every part of the game. You don't just have to analyse your own games for this, you could also analyse master games, for example, and take inspiration from their moves and their plans and ideas. We've done the three main active elements of SPAR. We've solved, we've played, and we've analysed. Now what we need to do is repeat, and then repeat it again consistently over time so that we enjoy our chess, build good habits, and potentially improve. The only thing left to discuss is how we effectively use our time. Think about how much time you have available in any given day or week, and just divide it into 3 and allocate a third to each part of the method. It really is that simple. So let's say you have an hour a day to focus on chess, and I really mean focus. I don't mean extra stuff like watching YouTube videos like this one or chess entertainment. I mean the real time that we have to actually improve without distraction. Take that hour that you've got in that day, 20 minutes solving, 20 minutes playing, 20 minutes analysing. I actually look at this on a weekly schedule because that helps me to fit it around my routine with work, family, and the rest of my life. It's whatever works for you that is important. I will be following this method, and in about a month's time, I will put out a follow-up video to let you know about my progress. And if you choose to do this too, then let me know how you get on in the comments below. Otherwise, please do feel free to like, subscribe, turn on notifications and all of that stuff. I hope that you found this useful, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.